Hello, dear story lovers. At the amount of 1,000 subscribers, I will post a huge series of special stories for you. Subscribe now. Elara had always been a dreamer, even before the accident that altered the trajectory of her life. As a child, she'd sprint across the fields outside her family's rural home, chasing fireflies and imagining herself as a starship captain charting unknown galaxies. Those dreams seemed untouchable now, locked away in a part of her mind she rarely visited. For the past 10 years, her world was one of four wheels and the city streets she knew too well. Solaris City was a marvel, a sprawling neon labyrinth that buzzed with life at all hours. Towering skyscrapers pierced the sky, connected by skybridges illuminated in an ever-shifting palette of colors. Autonomous drones zipped overhead, delivering packages and ferrying passengers in sleek pods. The people of Solaris City were as much a blend of organic and machine as the city itself. Cybernetic implants, retinal HUDs, and neural enhancements were commonplace. People didn't just live in the future, they were the future. But for Elara, the future always seemed just out of reach. Her accident, a collision between a drunk driver and her family's car when she was 15, had left her paralyzed from the waist down. The doctors had done their best to save her legs, but the damage was too severe. Rehabilitation was a grueling process, not only physically but mentally. Over time, she learned to maneuver her wheelchair through the world with grace and efficiency, but the longing to walk, to run, never left her. Her days were structured, almost mechanical. She lived alone in a small apartment that overlooked one of Solaris City's massive data towers. The holographic advertisements that wrapped the tower filled her room with a soft glow of colors at night, a bittersweet reminder of the world's ceaseless progress. By day, she worked as a developer for OmniVR, a company that specialized in hyperrealistic virtual environments. Her job required her to design experiences for people who sought to escape their physical realities, a task she was intimately familiar with. Elara's work was brilliant, praised by colleagues and superiors alike, but she knew it came from a place of longing. She created expansive, open worlds, landscapes that begged to be explored on foot. Her avatars ran, jumped, and climbed with an ease she'd almost forgotten. Yet, when she removed her VR headset, she was always reminded of the truth. On most days, she accepted her reality without bitterness. She was independent, self-sufficient, and even found joy in small things, the satisfaction of coding a flawless environment, the warmth of the barista at her favorite coffee shop, or the rare moments of quiet in a city that never slept. But there were moments like when the graph trams zipped by above her, or when she watched children chase each other through the park that an ache stirred in her chest, deep and heavy. This day was one of those days. The streets of Solaris were packed, bustling with activity as usual. Elara maneuvered her wheelchair through the crowd with practiced precision, her hands gripping the rims of the wheels, her head held high. She had learned to navigate the city's quirks, the uneven pavements, the overly steep ramps, and the occasional inattentive pedestrian. But even she wasn't immune to the city's unpredictability. Turning onto an unfamiliar street, Elara found herself confronted by a stretch of cracked and uneven pavement. She hesitated, her eyes scanning for an alternative route, but before she could react, one of her wheels slipped into a deep pothole. The jolt was sudden, sending her forward as she scrambled to stop herself from toppling. She tried to pull back, but the wheel was stuck fast. Frustration bubbled in her chest as she glanced around for help. Solaris City was never short on people, but its citizens were often too consumed by their own lives to notice someone in need. She muttered under her breath and tried again, gripping the rims of her wheels and straining to free the trapped chair. "Need a hand," a voice said from behind her. Elara turned to see a man standing there, holding a small toolkit. He was tall, with unruly dark hair streaked with silver and sharp, piercing eyes. His attire was casual, but there was something about him that screamed precision, like every movement, every gesture, was calculated. "I can manage," Elara replied automatically, her pride bristling at the offer of help. The man crouched down beside her, ignoring her protest. "Looks like your wheel caught on some debris." Let me at least get you unstuck. Elara reluctantly nodded, watching as the man expertly dislodged her wheel. His hands were steady, and the tools he used were unlike anything she'd seen before, sleek, compact, and clearly custom-built. When he was done, he stood and offered her a hand. Dr. Leo Castor, he introduced himself with a small smile. You're lucky I came by. Not many people carry tools for this sort of thing. Elara, she replied, shaking his hand. And I'm not sure if I'd call it lucky. Dr. Castor chuckled softly, his eyes studying her wheelchair with interest. It's not often I see someone like you, someone who hasn't embraced the city's more advanced options. Elara raised an eyebrow. Not everyone can afford cutting-edge tech. Dr. Castor's expression softened. Maybe not, but sometimes the cutting edge can find you. Before Elara could ask what he meant, he slipped a sleek business card into her hand. If you ever want to talk about a way to change your perspective, come find me. She glanced at the card. It was blank, save for a symbol, a pair of intertwined gears. When she looked up again, Dr. Castor was already walking away, disappearing into the crowd. Elara sat there for a moment, the card heavy in her hand. For the first time in years, a spark of curiosity flickered in her chest, a glimmer of something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The card sat on Elara's desk for days, its enigmatic design taunting her with unanswered questions. She found herself staring at it more often than she cared to admit. The intertwined gears seemed to shift subtly under the light, a trick of the holographic printing that added an almost hypnotic quality. Dr. Leo Castor, she muttered under her breath, turning the card over in her fingers for the 100th time. She'd done her research. A few searches revealed he was a renowned robotics engineer and inventor, once hailed as a prodigy. Articles spoke of groundbreaking prosthetics and biomechanical advancements, projects that blurred the line between human and machine. But there was little else. He'd vanished from the public eye years ago, his last known affiliation a private research facility that had since shut down. She couldn't shake their encounter. His confidence, his tools, the way he spoke as though he already knew her. And his parting words. They lingered, echoing in her mind. Finally, curiosity won out. Using the hollow address embedded in the card, she sent a short message. I'm Elara, the one with the stuck wheel. You said I should find you. Why? The reply came almost instantly, as if he'd been waiting. Come see for yourself. Address attached. The coordinates led her to an unassuming building on the outskirts of Solaris City, far from the neon-lit core she called home. The area was quieter, less crowded, with sprawling warehouses and industrial complexes. The building itself was a simple gray structure with no signage, its metallic surface reflecting the overcast sky. Elara hesitated outside, her wheels crunching softly on the gravel. This was a bad idea. What kind of person hands out cryptic cards and invites strangers to unmarked buildings? But something deep inside her, a mix of curiosity and defiance, pushed her forward. The entrance slid open with a soft hiss as she approached, revealing a long corridor bathed in sterile white light. The air smelled faintly of ozone and machinery. She moved forward cautiously, her fingers brushing against the cool walls. At the end of the hallway, a large door opened, revealing a cavernous laboratory that took her breath away. The space was a symphony of innovation. Workstations filled with holographic schematics hovered mid-air, robotic arms assembling intricate components with surgical precision. Racks of sleek exoskeletons lined the walls, their designs ranging from utilitarian to almost artistic. In the center of it all stood Dr. Castor, adjusting a towering robotic frame. You made it, he said without turning around, his voice carrying a note of satisfaction. I almost didn't, Elara replied, rolling into the lab. You're not exactly forthcoming with details. He turned to face her, a small smile tugging at the corner of his lips. Details are overrated. Sometimes it's better to see things firsthand. All right, she said, folding her arms. I'm here. Show me. Dr. Castor motioned her toward a nearby workstation. The holographic display flickered to life as she approached, projecting a three-dimensional model of what looked like a pair of robotic legs. They were sleek and elegant, their joints crafted with an almost organic fluidity. This, he said, gesturing to the projection, is what I've been working on. A fully integrated neuro-robotic mobility system. These aren't just prosthetics, they're an extension of the human body. They respond to thought, adapt to terrain, and even enhance natural abilities. Elara stared at the model, her heart pounding. And you're showing me this because I believe you're the perfect candidate, he said, meeting her gaze. I've been looking for someone like you, someone who hasn't adapted to conventional implants. Your body is untouched by failed integrations or subpar tech. You're a clean slate. A clean slate, she repeated, her voice tinged with skepticism. You make me sound like a science project. Dr. Castor shook his head. Not a project. A partner. Someone who can help me take this technology to its next stage. Elara leaned back, trying to process everything. Why me? You could have anyone, athletes, soldiers, people who would jump at the chance to have something like this. Because those people don't understand what it means to be grounded, he said softly. They've never had to fight for every inch of mobility. You have. And that means you'll respect what these legs can do in a way no one else will. His words struck a chord she wasn't ready to acknowledge. For years, she'd buried the anger and longing that came with her disability, but hearing him articulate it so plainly brought it all rushing back. How does it work? She asked finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Castor's face lit up, his enthusiasm spilling over. He explained the process, the neural link that would be implanted in her spinal cord to interface directly with her nervous system, the training required to synchronize her thoughts with the robotic limbs, and the safeguards to ensure her body adapted seamlessly. It was a combination of biology and technology so advanced it sounded like something out of a sci-fi novel. And what happens if it doesn't work? She asked. There are risks, he admitted. No one's attempted a full neural integration of this magnitude. But I believe in this technology. And I believe in you. Elara stared at the hologram, her mind racing. It was a leap into the unknown, a gamble with stakes higher than she'd ever faced. But it was also a chance to reclaim something she thought she'd lost forever. All right, she said finally, meeting his gaze. I'll do it. Dr. Castor's smile widened, and for the first time in years, Elara felt something she hadn't dared to feel. Hope. The decision was made, but the road ahead was far from straightforward. Dr. Castor wasted no time in preparing for the procedure. He walked Elara through every step, balancing technical details with reassurances. Still, the enormity of what lay ahead weighed heavily on her mind. It's not just about getting you to walk, Dr. Castor had explained during one of their preparatory sessions. This is about giving you freedom, a new kind of freedom. But that also means you're stepping into uncharted territory. Uncharted territory. The phrase resonated with Elara. Her whole life had felt like a wilderness she was forced to navigate without a map. Maybe this was her chance to finally chart her own path. The procedure the day of the operation arrived faster than Elara anticipated. She sat in a sterile white room in Dr. Castor's lab, her wheelchair parked beside the examination table. The robotic leg, sleek, black, and gleaming with faint blue energy lines, stood on a pedestal nearby. They looked both intimidating and mesmerizing, like something pulled straight from a science fiction epic. Dr. Castor entered, his demeanor calm and focused. Are you ready? As ready as I'll ever be, Elara replied, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. The procedure began with a delicate surgery to implant the neural interface into her spinal cord. Elara was placed under anesthesia, drifting into a dreamless void as Dr. Castor and his team worked with meticulous precision. The interface was a marvel of biotechnology, designed to link her brain's motor functions directly to the robotic limbs. When she woke, the room was quiet save for the faint hum of machinery. She felt groggy, her body heavy and foreign. Dr. Castor was by her side, his face alight with anticipation. "How do you feel?" he asked. Elara blinked, her thoughts sluggish but intact. "Like I've been hit by a graph tram." He chuckled. "That's normal. Give it time. The interface is settling in." For the first few days, Elara remained in her wheelchair, her body recovering from the surgery. She could see the robotic legs standing nearby, their silent presence both comforting and daunting. The neural interface was tested daily, and though she felt no immediate connection to the legs, subtle sensations began to stir a faint hum in her nerves, like static before a storm. Learning to walk again, the real challenge began when the legs were attached. Dr. Castor and his team guided her through the process, carefully securing the robotic limbs to the neural ports embedded in her hips. The connection was seamless, almost unnervingly so, as if the legs were always meant to be part of her. "All right," Dr. Castor said, stepping back. "Try to stand." Elara hesitated. She focused, her mind reaching out to the new limbs. At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, she felt them respond, a faint twitch, followed by a steady hum as the legs activated. The sensation was unlike anything she'd ever experienced, a fusion of thought and action that felt both alien and exhilarating. With a deep breath, she pushed herself upright. The robotic legs supported her weight effortlessly, their servos whirring softly as they adjusted to her balance. For the first time in over a decade, Elara was standing. I'm doing it," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "You're doing it," Dr. Castor confirmed, a proud smile on his face. "Now, take a step." The first step was awkward, her movements jerky as her brain struggled to communicate with the unfamiliar limbs. But with each attempt, the connection grew stronger. The legs responded with increasing precision, their movements fluid and natural. By the end of the first session, Elara was walking unaided. The training. Walking was just the beginning. Over the next several weeks, Elara underwent rigorous training to master her new legs. The sessions were grueling, filled with moments of frustration and doubt, but she pushed through with determination. Dr. Castor was always there, guiding her, encouraging her, and reminding her of how far she'd come. The legs weren't just functional, they were extraordinary. They enhanced her mobility in ways she hadn't anticipated. She could run faster, jump higher, and maintain balance on surfaces that would challenge even the most athletic human. The neural interface allowed her to perform complex movements with ease, her thoughts translated into action almost instantaneously. But it wasn't just about physical adaptation. Elara had to confront the emotional weight of her transformation. For years, her wheelchair had been part of her identity, a symbol of her resilience, but also her limitations. Letting go of it felt both liberating and terrifying. "I feel like I'm losing a piece of myself," she confessed to Dr. Castor during one session. "You're not losing anything," he replied gently. "You're gaining something new. Something that doesn't erase who you were, it builds on it." The first flight. The final test of her new legs came one evening when Dr. Castor led her to the rooftop of the lab. The city stretched out before them, its neon lights painting the skyline in brilliant hues. A hover platform waited at the edge of the roof, its controls linked to her neural interface. "What is this?" Elara asked, eyeing the platform warily. "Your next challenge," Dr. Castor said with a grin. "These legs aren't just for walking. They're built for exploration. Go ahead, try it." With a mix of excitement and trepidation, Elara stepped onto the platform. It activated instantly, responding to her commands as if it were an extension of her body. She leapt into the air, the robotic legs propelling her higher than she thought possible. The sensation was exhilarating, a rush of freedom she hadn't felt in years. For the first time in over a decade, Alara wasn't just walking. She was flying. The sensation of flight was addictive. As the city spread out beneath her, its neon lights painting the sky in shades of electric blue and violet, Alara felt a freedom she hadn't known since she was a child. The robotic legs moved in perfect harmony with her thoughts, propelling her across the skyline as though she were born to this new form. Every leap was a symphony of precision and grace, and for the first time in years, she felt truly alive. When she landed back on the rooftop, Dr. Castor was waiting, his expression a mixture of pride and curiosity. "How does it feel?" he asked. Alara couldn't stop smiling. "Like I'm unstoppable." Dr. Castor nodded. "Good. Because what you've just done is only the beginning." A new purpose. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Alara didn't just adapt to her new legs, she thrived. With Dr. Castor's guidance, she began to push the boundaries of what the technology could do. The legs were more than tools, they were an evolution, capable of adapting to her unique needs and desires. But with her newfound abilities came a deeper realization: she couldn't keep this technology to herself. For years, Alara had felt invisible in a city that prioritized innovation over accessibility. Now, she had the power to change that. "I want to share this," she told Dr. Castor during one of their late-night brainstorming sessions. "There are so many people out there who've been left behind, people like me. They deserve a chance to walk, to run, to live again." Dr. Castor leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful look on his face. "You know this won't be easy. The corporate world isn't exactly known for its altruism. And this technology? It's light years ahead of what's currently on the market. They'll want to monetize it, control it. Then we don't give them the chance," Alara said firmly. "We do this on our terms." The revolution begins together. They formed Project Horizon, a grassroots initiative dedicated to making advanced prosthetics accessible to everyone. The project operated outside the boundaries of Solaris City's powerful tech corporations, relying instead on open-source designs and community funding. Dr. Castor's lab became a hub of innovation, attracting a small but passionate team of engineers, developers, and activists. Alara became the face of the movement. Her story resonated with people across the city and beyond. She wasn't just a developer or a test subject, she was living proof of what was possible. Her speeches, broadcast across the city's sprawling networks, ignited a wave of support. "Technology shouldn't be a privilege," she declared during one particularly rousing address. "It should be a right. No one should have to sit on the sidelines of life because they can't afford to stand." The challenges. Of course, not everyone was thrilled with Project Horizon's success. Corporate giants that had long dominated the prosthetics market saw Alara and Dr. Castor as a threat to their profits. They launched smear campaigns, claiming the technology was unsafe, experimental, and unregulated. Offers to buy out the project came with thinly veiled threats when they were refused. But Alara was undeterred. She'd spent too long being underestimated to back down now. Instead, she doubled down on her efforts, using her platform to expose the greed and corruption of the corporations that sought to control the industry. Dr. Castor, meanwhile, worked tirelessly to improve the technology. The robotic legs became lighter, more intuitive, and easier to manufacture. He even developed modular designs that could be customized for a variety of needs, from military applications to everyday mobility. A new horizon. Months turned into years, and Project Horizon grew beyond anything Alara could have imagined. The technology spread to communities across the city, transforming lives in ways both big and small. People who had been confined to wheelchairs, like Alara once was, took their first steps. Veterans who had lost limbs in battle found new strength. Even athletes began using the technology to push the limits of human performance. Alara herself became something of a legend. She wasn't just a developer or an advocate, she was a symbol of resilience and innovation. People looked to her not just for what she had achieved, but for what she represented, a future where no one was left behind. But even as she stood at the forefront of a technological revolution, Alara never forgot the personal journey that had brought her here. One evening, as she stood on the rooftop of the lab, gazing out at the city, Dr. Castor joined her. "You've come a long way," he said, his voice filled with quiet pride. "We both have," Alara replied. She glanced down at her legs, the faint blue glow of the neural circuits reflecting in her eyes. "Sometimes I still can't believe it's real." "It's as real as you make it," Dr. Castor said. "And something tells me you're just getting started." Alara smiled, the wind tugging at her hair as she looked out at the horizon. For the first time in years, the future felt boundless, a vast, open expanse waiting to be explored. She took a step forward, the city's lights stretching out before her like a sea of stars. And then, she leapt.